There's so much to discuss this morning with our first guest, President Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mr. Sullivan. I know the U.S. is providing some aid, has barred travel, but there are a number of Republicans and Democrats who believe the administration is not doing enough to help India and want even more supplies sent. So what more can be done now, and how concerned are you about these variants?
Well, thanks for having me, Martha. And first, in a crisis of this speed and ferocity, we always wish we could move faster and do more. We're proud of what we've done so far, which has included multiple plane loads, and we're talking very large military plane loads of supplies, including oxygen, including diverting raw materials for vaccines, including therapeutics that can help save lives. And we are continuing to work to source additional critical materials to move them as fast as we can, both directly from the United States and also galvanizing partners around the world. We are concerned about variants. We're concerned about spread. We're concerned about the loss of life, and also all of the secondary effects that emerge as this pandemic rages out of control in India.
The White House is also getting pressure to temporarily waive patent rules for vaccines from a group of 10 Democrats led by Bernie Sanders, who argue that by relaxing those intellectual property rules, these countries could produce their own generic vaccines much quicker. The Democrats, in a letter to the president, saying he should prioritize people over pharmaceutical companies. What's your reaction to that?
Well, here's the basic bottom line. We believe that the pharmaceutical companies should be supplying at scale and at cost to the entire world so that there is no barrier to everyone getting vaccinated. Our ambassador, Catherine Tai, our U.S. trade representative, is engaged in intensive consultations at the WTO to work through this issue, and we should have a way forward in the coming days.
And I want to move to President Biden's joint address before Congress this week. He's proposed trillions of dollars in domestic investment, saying it was necessary to keep up with places like China. Those plans have received a cool reception from many Republicans. I'm sure you're aware of that. And even some Democrats like Joe Manchin, who said we shouldn't spend money for the sake of spending money. What does it mean for our competition against China if the president can't get his infrastructure and jobs plans through Congress?
Well, as the president has said, we're going to be engaged in a stiff competition with China in the years and decades ahead. And the United States needs to approach that competition from a position of strength. And the number one thing we can do to accomplish that is to invest in ourselves, in our infrastructure, in our innovation, in our manufacturing, in our people. And that means the bold, far-reaching investments in everything from research and development to an updated electricity grid, to all of the job-creating, middle-class growing investments Joe Biden has proposed. That's not just good for our economic security, it's good for our national security, and it's critical from my perspective as National Security Advisor to make the case to Republicans and Democrats alike that this is in the national security interest.
And is Joe Biden willing to make concessions?
Joe Biden has said that he's prepared to talk to anyone, Republican or Democrat, about putting a package together that can pass and that can get the job done. And the job, Martha, is to make the kinds of investments across the board in all the areas I just talked about so that the United States truly is able to do, as he said many times, build back better.
I want to talk about climate change. While most Republicans agree that China is a top foreign policy challenge, some are critical of the White House's efforts to work with them on climate change, worried that the president will have to make some trade-off on things like human rights. Here's what my next guest, Senator Barrasso, says. He said, we should not turn our energy dominance over to the whims of foreign powers like China that are actively seeking America's decline. President Biden said he wants to make sure every nation plays by the same rules in the global economy, including China, yet his administration seems determined to fall for China's grand deception. China is playing the United States for the fool. Your reaction?
Well, first, President Biden gathered the world leaders, 40 of them, in a summit hosted at the White House to deal with the existential challenge of climate change and to drive home the argument that every country, including China, has to do its part. The United States is prepared to own and win the clean energy race for the future, which itself is going to create millions of jobs and enhance our national security. But we are also going to hold other countries accountable, including, as President Biden has said many times, through making sure that there can't be a race to the bottom. China will not be able to get away with polluting industries in their country and then exporting those goods to undercut American workers. We will not permit that to happen. So we have clear eyes about the way ahead, but we fundamentally believe that it is in the best interest of the United States for us to be the clean energy superpower of the world, not China or anyone else.
And I want to turn to Iran. Iran says it has reached agreement with the parties in the 2015 nuclear deal for your administration to lift a raft of economic sanctions to help get the agreement back on track. Is that accurate? And are you talking about a full rollback of sanctions?
We have not yet reached agreement in Vienna, which is where the talks between the world powers and Iran are taking place right now. There is still a fair distance to travel to close the remaining gaps. And those gaps are over what sanctions the United States and other countries will roll back. They are over what nuclear restrictions Iran will accept on its program to ensure that they can never get a nuclear weapon. And our diplomats will keep working at that over the coming weeks to try to arrive at a mutual return to the JCPOA, which is the Iran nuclear deal, on a compliance for compliance basis. So the short answer, Martha, is there is no deal now. We're hoping to continue to make progress, and we're hoping ultimately to achieve the objective that President Biden has laid out.
And speaking of nuclear, North Korea this morning is warning the U.S. will face a grave situation because President Biden called the North a serious security threat. You have talked about being somewhere in the middle between Trump and Obama. Neither of those plans worked with North Korea. Why does a middle ground seem possible?
Well, first, Martha, our policy towards North Korea is not aimed at hostility. It's aimed at solutions. It's aimed at ultimately achieving the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And we're prepared to engage in diplomacy towards that ultimate objective, but work on practical measures that can help us make progress along the way towards that goal. And we believe that rather than all for all or nothing for nothing, a more calibrated, practical, measured approach stands the best chance of actually moving the ball down the field towards reducing the challenge posed by North Korea's nuclear program.
Okay, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.